The Empowering Students to Globally Connect project was an opportunity that actually grew as the years went on. It started as a one-year project, but it went to 2 years, and we were able to make a culminating video that was done by students, an 8th grader and a junior, completely edited and filmed the movie themselves. An original score was written by our senior Patrick Flynn. There was a culminating dinner made with Laotian food. The most important takeaway from this project for me as a teacher was to realize that everything we did was done by the students. It was driven by the students. And therefore, there's some things that I would have changed in the future. I would have made some editing changes in the movie so that it was a little clearer. I would have added in more of the student focus. I would have had the filming music be a little more uplifting, but it's really important to remember this was the student's voice in this project. Overall, it was a great opportunity for kids in Mashpee to collaborate on something that was on the other side of the world, and it's inspired our teachers in Mashpee to try their own globally connected projects. To Rachel, and once you saw what the country of Laos looked like, how did that help you decide which project you were going to do?
Well, when we talked to Rachel, we took that as a opportunity to figure out what the country of Laos, or even just the villages that she's been to, from her experiences, what they may have needed most out of us. So what struck me the most was the children, and how they're not really allowed to be like American children and like relax, you know what I mean? They're either going to school or working or whatever. So I thought it would be good to just simply make like a board game for them. And the original idea behind that was just make like a checkerboard, but an issue that was brought up was that the tray for the 3D printer in Laos was only like 4x4, so we couldn't really make a whole checkers board out of that, so we scrapped that idea, keeping the same board game as like an idea, and decided on making a tic-tac-toe board, and 3D modeled that along with X's and O's, and then sent the file over to Lao with Dr. Sheffield, and she was able to 3D print them, and from what I hear, it's been a big success.
Okay. What project did you work on, Joe?
I worked with Jaden on the tic-tac-toe board, and me and him, or him and I, created this together with a few other kids in our group, and it was pretty successful. I have no complaints. Like, it was pretty easy. It was a pretty easy project to do and complete on Creo. I mean, it's just making a square and adding walls and then make the pieces. Like, it didn't take too long. I mean, it did, however, like, we weren't fortunate, or it was disfortunate how we couldn't continue with our original plans with the checkerboard or the chessboard, because that probably would have been like really cool to make and probably would have looked very. It would have looked nice,
a lot better, yeah.
compared to it's like a little tic-tac-toe board, if you can kind of feel what I'm saying.
Why couldn't you go ahead with the chessboard?
Because, like Jaden said, the 3D printer was too small, but we improvised.
So what's your one takeaway or your major impression that you're left with from working on this project?
Well, like I said before, the thing that struck me were like the little differences, like with the children or whatever, but as a whole, probably the idea that I was able to help people less fortunate and use technology that we take for granted to improve their lives even just the slightest bit. Because something as simple as a tic-tac-toe board, which is like a child's game, even like monks and monasteries over there were playing with it and were amazed by it because they've never seen anything like it before. And I know a few other projects were very useful to them too, such as like the strainer may not have been used maybe to what they planned on it being used for, but it was still useful to them. But as a whole, I am very grateful that I was able to impact the lives of people less fortunate.
Of the country of Laos when you first started doing research, Joe?
When I first started doing research on the country, I first noticed how different it was compared to where we live, especially after Skyping with Rachel, and she told us all about it, how they live, how they go to school, and their hygiene, just all that factored in. It kind of gave me like a real good feel of like who we were dealing with. And I don't know, it kind of helped like contribute to the ideas. It like motivated us. My biggest takeaway from the project was simply the fact that we did a project with an Australian doctor, and we connected with kids from a whole nother country, communist nation, like completely across the globe. That's probably the biggest factor of this project, and that's what makes it so different than any other project we've done. And helping the less fortunate, it was pretty cool. And well, not pretty cool, it was just, it felt good. And I don't know, hold on, you can like cut that.
When I gave you the project initially, what was your initial thought in the research?
At first, I had no idea like what Laos was, so I decided to do my own research on it, and I found that online, if you just looked up the place, you weren't gonna find like the poverty and the people that were struggling and what they actually had to go through. You found a lot of websites where you could see resorts and like people having fun, and like there wasn't much struggle going on. So at first I was really confused on what we were trying to do the project on, because it didn't show what was really happening. And then I just decided, after we talked to Rachel, that's when we finally cleared up like what was really going on, and she was telling us about how when the rainy seasons came, it was always flooding, and then when it was dry, it was dusty, and it caused a lot of fires when they had, like with the lamp idea that we had, you wanted to fix the fires that they had because it was so dry, and then also the whole shower situation where they bathed in one river, and that was also the river they got like their water from, and just all of this terrible things that you would think people would try to put out there as the first thing to show, instead of just like commercialized resorts and such.
All right, the project that you ended up working on, Worthington?
The project that I ended up working on were the strainers with Tiana, of course, in our group. We, as a class, we came together on 3 main ideas as like a poll almost. And when we were working on strainers, we came up with ideas that their food wasn't stored efficiently. They were left out so they would get room temperature, making it, I wouldn't say, because that's their everyday life, so we can't say if it's satisfying or not. But we wanted to make something ideal to store it in more efficiently. And what we came up together on, well, me and Tiana at the time, we came up with a pot, almost like a pot top, and a bowl that would go to it. But our restrictions were the 3D printer was smaller than ours. So we were trying to revolve that idea around how big we can make stuff. Some people in our class even made the pieces of their idea into puzzle pieces so we can snap it together and stuff like that. So, yeah.
So what did the end result be? What was the ending product that you guys ended up making, the group that you were in?
Instead of actually like we ended up making a strainer type prototype, and basically we thought that they were going to use it for more food-based stuff, but we later found out that most of their food is rice or grainy, and it would fall through the holes of the strainer. So instead they use it for their soap to hold when they bathe in the river, and it keeps it from getting gross, and it keeps it more sanitary than before.
So also the reason why we couldn't use the strainer was because they have soups, right?
Yeah.
So can you talk about that? So why else was the strainer not necessarily used for food?
The other problem was soups, related items, and like liquidy, so it would just fall through, of course. The holes that we had originally in the strainer were about 2 inches wide, I think, or smaller than that, and they didn't know the idea of strainers like we did, so they just, like Tiana said, they came together and they made them as soap holders, so when they bathe in the river, it wouldn't get messed up and dirty.
Excellent. And you were told about the Mashpee Lao project and that you were going to be tasked with using your tech and engineering skills to help the people of Laos. What was your first thoughts and initial impression when you did your research?
Well, the research was really talking to Rachel and like learning about Lao in the first place, because I really had no idea where or what that was. So being able to like do the research to see like what they need, how they live, like how the kids go to school, just like I knew that with the technology given here, just the little things could help out.
Were you surprised at what the country of Laos was actually like?
I was quite surprised because these kids, like I didn't expect them to be like wealthy or anything. Like I knew we were dealing with like a poor country, but I didn't expect the kids to be moved away from their families and parents and live on their own just to go to school.
Hi, I'm Dr. Rachel Sheffield, and my reflections on the Empowering Students program was that I think there were lots of challenges, and Amanda and I probably would have given up, but the kids were invested, and once they were invested, that was an indication that we needed to persist. So when there were some really interesting challenges with time differences and so forth, and so on, and computers and printers and things, I think they were very invested. And the other thing I think is that it's been a very amazing experience to collaborate across continents as educators, because I think it really demonstrates the power that we have to reach out and do things across the world and have influence and impact. I think that's really special.